unique in the way that we are masters of creation. So I don't know, what's going to happen with this patient I was telling you about. Maybe this disease process will take him over, and he'll die. Or maybe he'll just decide not to live anymore. And I wouldn't blame him for that either, because that'd be pretty hard for anyone to deal with. I can't imagine myself being a health advocate, valuing my body and being able to take care of it and use it for things that are enjoyable to me, and then having that all taken away from me. Um, and trying to find hope, you know, for that. So, nonetheless, I would hope that maybe I can find value and other things in life, whether it be reading, writing, uh, only in meditation, stuff like that that doesn't involve physical movement or involve my body very much as far as a function, uh, and for doing things. So my point of this is, though, that us being masters of creation, uh, that I don't know where it's going to end up for him, and I think one as a person of wanting to be able to help one another, and change the world, so to speak. Uh, we're not always going to see the effect of it, and even if the person decides to kill himself, naturally, that would I can understand why a person would want to do that. But that doesn't mean you didn't affect their life. If you put yourself in their shoes, I would assume, and I'm gonna put myself in his shoes for a moment, that even if I decide to not want to live anymore, I would still feel good that having had that positive interaction with a stranger and knowing that strangers do care, you know. Um, and I had also thought about another situation where the day before I was leaving, uh, a kid basically fell off a cliff. It was about 20 feet high, hit some rocks in the area of Turner Falls in Oklahoma. Um, he had a pretty bad fracture to his wrist, you know, open fracture. His hand was basically like off and the bone was out. Wasn't any squirting blood or anything, but he also had a pelvic fracture, which is life threatening because you can lose a lot of blood in that area. And his skin started turning pale, and his mental status was decreasing. It could mean meaning of two things. Like, one, either his brain isn't getting enough oxygen, uh, but he did have like a pulse, a radio pulse, so he's got enough blood pressure to get um, some type of perfusion in his brain. It might not be enough, or he might have hit his head and he could have something called epidural bleed, which is very life threatening. It's almost impossible to survive from that. Even if that happens and you're on the operation table within a second after it happening, it's still very small chances of survival. So there's a very good chance that this patient I encountered had this. I was aware of this at the time. Still just doing the best I could, um, to care for that patient. His friend was with him. His friend didn't know how serious the injury was. It just knew that we were serious about getting him some rapid treatment and some rapid transfer of care. He ended up getting helicoptered out of there. But myself and three police officers, one who happened to be a prior paramedic, and I wasn't even on duty. It was at my last day of training. I was just having fun hiking in this cool place called Turner Falls in Oklahoma City, or outside of Oklahoma City actually. But anyways, we all got together, and then some volunteer firefighters who aren't even really medically trained. They're not. I don't even think they might be first responders, but they're not even EMTs. But they're just people who live in the area who get activated on short notice to help out with some type of situation. So they had like a Stokes litter and a spinal board, which is basically something you can strap a person into to help move them quickly. So anyways, we all got together, and in this situation when this person fell, to help another human being who needed it. And I remember his friend was there, and his friend was obviously worried for him, but was with him by his side the whole time. So anyways, especially in those situations, I think it's really important to show your care and compassion. You know, there's one aspect of medicine which is perfect, proper treatment, you know, and throw aside any types of compassion, professionalism, just basically getting the treatment done, you know. And then there's like another side of it, which I think is also very beneficial. Maybe not as important, you know, depending on your perception. From a spiritual perspective, it probably is more important. But from a black and white kind of materialistic perspective, it's not as important. And I'd argue, at least in my shoes, the materialistic perspective of making sure that treatment is perfect or near perfect, that's more important than their feelings at the time. But nonetheless, you know, just showing that you care for another human being, and in those situations, you know, whether that person lost his friend, you know, and if that person died, let's say that person did die, at least his last experience with human beings was human beings all getting together really well to just care for his life, just strangers that don't even know him to care for his life. And then, you know, his friend just being able to watch this, you know, a bunch of strangers getting together to care for his, you know, one of his best friend's life, and, you know, doing everything they can to make sure that his friend, you know, makes it out of this alive if he can. And I'm sure that helps with the mourning process for the friend. It probably, you know, greatly impacts his life in a positive way, as far as seeing how other people can be when, you know, shit goes bad, basically. Which would probably, if it were me in that situation, if I lost one of my best friends, you know, no matter how rough life seems sometimes, and no matter how uncaring people seem sometimes, with that experience in my mind, permanently burned in my memory of people caring, that would positively influence my life. And by influencing my life, I could help influence other people's lives in a positive way. So it's really interesting to think about how just how you treat another person can influence their life personally, and their experience of their life, whether it's ending or not, and how that can in turn influence other people's lives. You know, think about how the sisters who were in there when I happened to be reading that to the guy who had his, you know, his leg amputated, like how that possibly influenced their life, you know, and the other people they interact with in the future. And then also for the best friend of the guy who fell off the cliff, you know, how that's going to positively influence his life and how he sees other people, and knowing in the back of his mind that people do care. So, hope that makes sense. I know life seems rough sometimes, but yeah, just remember that, yeah, people can be fucking dicks, you know, and us as humans, we are masters of our creation. And think about what type of life you want to create for another person, for your life, and just your surroundings immediately, and then where that goes from there. If this makes sense, hope you get something from that. Thank you.